everyone, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be taking part in a reading tics tag. I was actually tagged by Fina of FineReads, and she did a really cute, amazing video, which I will link to down below in the description if you guys want to see her video or if you're unfamiliar with her channel. So yeah, basically if you guys are unfamiliar with the reading tics tag, it is just a list of 10 questions that you answer so that your viewers and your booktube or bookish community can get to know you guys a little bit better. Unfortunately, I'm not feeling very creative this morning. It was all that I could do to clear up a background here, but I will try to get this done and make it be as not boring as possible. And by the way, before we start, if you guys are hearing the washing machine in the background, I'm really sorry. Life has to happen while filming has to happen. So there might be sounds of the washing machine, and I'm sorry about that. Okay, you guys, so let's get started. The first question I have is, do you only read at a specific time of day? And for me, the answer is no, not really. I read whenever I have a little bit of time. Also, I often listen to audiobooks while I'm working because that helps me, and I'll put it on my earphones even if I'm alone in the house, because that way with the Bluetooth, I can walk around the house, I can do my housework, folding laundry, cooking, that type of thing. And then I can also be listening to a book at the same time. And obviously, as I'm filling orders, because I work from home and I have online stores. If you guys are new here, maybe you don't know that, but if you guys are returning subscribers or returning viewers, you would know that. So I will often listen to books as I'm working. So audio definitely has like a really big place in my life. But mostly if I'm going to be sitting down to read print books, I might do that in the morning when I have a little bit of downtime. And I try not to read before I go to bed because that actually puts me to sleep, and then I don't really get into the novel. But usually first thing after a rest, first thing, whenever I'm feeling like I have some energy and can really devote that energy to concentrating on a book, that's when I'll probably sit down and read. The next question is, do you prefer to read in your work/everyday clothes, or are you partial to reading in PJs or comfy clothes? I have clothes in my closet that have never seen the light of day, that probably haven't seen the light of day since the pandemic. I am like constantly in comfy clothes, like all the time. You've seen it on film. I'm not even making a pretense at trying to get dressed for you all. And that is pretty much how I read. If I do go out, let's say I'm wearing a pair of jeans, I will come home and I will immediately switch into a pair of sweatpants. And so yeah, that pretty much encompasses the answer to that question, because I will always be 99% of the time in comfy clothes or pajamas. So that answers that question. What is your favorite reading spot? Is it couch, chair, bed, outdoors, or somewhere else? I would love to read outdoors. Unfortunately, I live in Canada, so that's not always possible for me because it's really cold. And in the summer, there's like a lot of insects and stuff. So unless I find that I have a nice gazebo with a screen or something like that, I don't very often get a chance to read outdoors. But my ideal self, like the self that I imagine, the higher version of myself would be reading outdoors all the time. So that would be my ideal place to read, but it's not where I actually read. So mostly I read on the couch. Sometimes I'll read in bed if I'm feeling like I want to lie down. And then very occasionally, if I really have to sit and concentrate on a book, at that point, I may read at my desk. So if I'm doing annotating, or such as this morning, I was trying to finish Ordinary Monsters over a cup of coffee. And for that, it's much easier for me to read at my desk because the book is a really thick chunker. It's a hardcover. It needs, there's a certain book height to eye level ratio that I try to achieve. So even if I'm reading on the couch, and I can't tell if maybe you guys have seen it in a previous video, but I will use a lap desk, just something to prop the books up a little more, so to try and get comfy. But I would say that the lion's share of the time I do read right over there in that spot that you see behind me. Question number 4. Do you snack while reading, or is this a no-go? Do you or have you ever peeked at the end of a book, or do you avoid spoilers at all costs? The only time that I will ever actually peek at the end of a book is if I've already lost interest in it and I want to know how the story ends, but the writing is either annoying to me, or I've just lost interest in the book, or I feel like the book is too long, or I just don't have the mood and I just want to get it sort of over and done with. At that point, I may just jettison the book and I'll probably go on to like Wikipedia or something like that, or look for an online summary or a walkthrough if I'm interested in how the story ends, but just have lost patience and don't want to read it. So you guys can make of that what you will, because like Otherwise, if I'm interested in the story, no, I will not peek at the end. I will only essentially do that if the author has already lost me. Question number 6, do you prefer first person or third person narrative, or do you care? So actually, I do have feelings about that. I prefer, in order, a third person narrative, a first person narrative in past tense, and then my least favorite is a first person narrative in present tense. And here is why, okay? I like a story to be told in third person narration, because then you get the added benefit of having different POV characters, and I prefer that the story be told to me rather than I discover things at the same time as the character in question. Whereas if you have a first person narrative, then you're also discovering things at the same time as your protagonist or as the character that you're reading their point of view from. So if I had my choice, I would prefer a third person narrator or a third person narrative, so to speak, as opposed to a first person narrative. But if I'm going to read a first person narrative, I prefer that to be in the past tense. There's nothing that gets under my skin more than a first person narrative in present tense. I don't know what it is about it. It just doesn't compute well in my brain, and it takes me a lot longer to get used to the story or get into the story. For example, I just finished reading Honey, and that was told as a first person narrative in the present tense, but it kept doing these like forward and backward time jumps, you know, as she was telling the story of her rise to stardom. So you would go back and forward in time, and it just, I don't know, it takes me a little while longer to get into it when that happens. So I'm definitely a bigger fan of third person narratives. Question number 7, do you read dedications, author's notes, acknowledgements, or do you skip those? I skip those. I skip them all. I don't have time for that. I don't. Question number 8, do you have a favorite reading beverage? Not necessarily. Like, I can vacillate between water, coffee, and sometimes tea. And I think that sometimes it's just for the aesthetic appeal of it. If I brew myself a cup of tea, I don't always drink it. It just kind of sits there and I nurse at it. So tea is probably my least favorite beverage, and that's if I'm having anything to drink at all. I'll have something in the afternoon, maybe as a pick-me-up if I'm reading, just to make sure that I don't fall asleep when I'm reading, but other than that, no, not specifically. I'm very boring. Question number 9. How do you decide what to read next? TBR, mood, goals, random choice? So for me, it's always going to be mood, or sometimes even the mood will lead to a random choice, such as yesterday, even though I still have a little bit of Ordinary Monsters to finish, which I'm going to be finishing today, probably right after I record, edit, and upload this video. I did decide to start a new book last night because I knew that I wouldn't have time to finish Ordinary Monsters before I went to sleep, but I did want to do a little bit of reading, so I actually just went to my TBR cart and picked up a copy of Starter Villain. So it was just happened to be that it was there. It was a short book. I needed something in a different genre. I was reading a fantasy. I wanted to read a science fiction. I was reading a 600-page book. I wanted to read something that was much, much shorter. So it really just depends on a whole convolution of circumstances. And that's kind of how I ended up picking Starter Villain, because it was a different genre, it was a shorter book after having read a longer book. So those are the kinds of things that will come into play when I'm making a decision as to what book to read next. Sometimes if I've done a whole bunch of fantasy books, or especially if I've done a whole bunch of firsts in series, at that point I may want to do a standalone, which was the case for Starter Villain, since Ordinary Monsters is a first in a series and a chunker and a fantasy. That's kind of what led me to picking Starter Villain, which is a shorter book and a standalone novel in a different genre. So I hope that that makes sense. Now for question number 10, I'm being asked to tag some others. So for this tag, and I just want to preface this by saying I'm just randomly selecting people. I have not done any research into your channel, wondering if you have done this Reading Ticks tag at all. So I'm sorry if I've tagged you and you've already done this, but I'm going to tag The Answer Is Books, and I'm going to tag Mr. Sosotris Reads, and I am also going to tag Alex Reads. So hopefully you guys will get on this bandwagon and do the Reading Ticks tag along with us. Again, if you guys want to see Fina's video, where I was originally tagged to do this Reading Tags video, I will leave a link to that down below, as well as to the 3 people that I have tagged in this video. So hopefully you guys will go and check out their channels, see if they might be interesting booktubers to follow for you. These are all people that I follow, of course. And yeah, I think we'll just close off this video here. I'm sorry it was very boring and uneventful. People have been getting really creative with with their videos, but I was just a talking head today, but I think that that's what you come here for. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. You know, if you've stayed until the end of the video, I love you the best, and I will see you again in the next video. Ciao for now.